part of pivoting is not a flex. It's just figuring it out. Today we talk about decisions in our career path and how it changed our life on Mama We Made It.
What's good, Reg?
Man, good morning. What's good? Everything is fine and dandy over here as we are, in the shadow of the Met Gala this past Monday, which was Black Excellence and Black Dandyism, I believe, was the title. So everything over here is fine and dandy. How about you?
Yeah, it was. I caught some glimpses of that, most notably Mr. Sharpton.
I didn't see Al. I can't look at Al, man. Every time I see him, because I was in New York when there was Big Al and the perm phase, to see him as Eraserhead drives me a little really crazy. Like, he's super skinny and a big, and be clear, I know cats have a lot of different opinions on Reverend Sharpton.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a fan. I'm personally a fan. I think he's
no shade
had
at all.
Missteps over the years, but I think that in general he reps the people. I think he's sincere and rightly guided. Whether or not he should be the person that gets the call all the time, I don't know. But I'm a fan.
Yeah.
I didn't see him.
I wouldn't run out and see it, but it's true. It'll take you from Eraserhead to some other things, man. So yeah, just if you get a chance. When anybody else with a piano on their back besides Stax, I'm gonna have a problem with it. He can rock whatever he wants.
Whatever he wants to. Whatever he wants to. And
that's a problem.
What do you think of the album?
Haven't gotten through it yet, but I'm looking forward to it because, again, for me, his whole premise around, look, man, I'm multidimensional and I'm going to try some things. I'm going to do some things that might not feel comfortable for people.
Sure.
That's part of my journey. Sure. I love that, man.
It reminds me personally of old Jean-Luc Ponty.
Oh, then I'm probably 100% in.
Just, peaceful, quiet, melodic, ain't no bars, right? Ain't no beats like that. But it is definitely mood music and peaceful, reflective, walk in the woods type music, and I don't mind that at all. So I'm with you. Like, his moves always work for me because he's sincerely trying to be an artist, as well as just like in touch with his humanity. So I rock with that. So I did see the piano. I was like, okay, let's do that.
We'll get to today's topic, but I saw him once when I lived in Dunwoody. I think he also lived in Dunwoody at the time, at a restaurant. And I was with my girlfriend at the time, and he was with a really nice-looking young lady. And the brother was playing with chopsticks on the table, beating the table the entire time.
Really?
Yeah. I'm like, Stax, I get it, man, but I mean, like, kind of loud, like he was the only one in there, and I'll never forget that. I'm like, dude, what are you doing, man?
Did you recognize the beat? Did 10 years later, did something come out to that beat he was playing?
No, it sounded like something I was doing in probably 7th grade.
Oh, in the cafeteria, got you.
Yeah, right. But he was in his zone, man. And I would say, Persis was circa 2002, somewhere around there, man. So it was just interesting. The one time I was in his presence, but great dude. Man.
I like that. I like Three Stacks. I'm a big fan. Welcome to Mama We Made It with DJ and Reg. As you can tell, hopefully by now, that's DJ and I'm Reg. Welcome to the show. We're excited to get into today's conversation. Today we want to talk about, for lack of a better title, the pivot. I know there's a podcast called The Pivot. We ain't talking about that, but rather moments in our lives, specifically moments in our careers where major moves have been made that, in the moment, maybe we didn't understand it, but looking back, it was indeed pivotal, and it was, transformational in our lives, in our lived experience, and kind of share a little bit about what that journey was like for us. So welcome to the show. Man, there are so many in my world, I couldn't figure out where to start. So I'm going to kick it over to you and let you go first, my brother.
Sure. Yeah. And if there's a few, man, hopefully we'll have enough time to discuss that. One really stands out, and actually you had something to do with it, which is interesting. I was in a role that I loved and hopefully made some impact in the marketplace and with the folks I was working with at that time. But I got approached by the person I reported to, who was in town, giving us accolades as a team, and said he wanted to do dinner. So we do dinner. I'm thinking it's our standard dinner, man, where we just kind of hang out, talk, catch up. But he said, he asked the server for a pen, and he took a cocktail napkin and he started writing on it. And there was a job title and a dollar amount in a city. And everything about it was, yeah, I'm feeling all that, all three of them, right? So he handed it to me. He said, this is for you. He said, what else do you need to know? Operation Say No More. I need nothing else. I said, I'm in. So it was going to take me from Chicago to New York. And I was in. So my ex at the time was relocating to New York. We were trying to rekindle. This was perfect. She had just made the move. I'm excited for 1,000 reasons. Never lived in the city, Yonkers, as a kid. So Purse, I start to make arrangements. I'm like, you know what? We're gonna shut this down. No new membership here. I like that club there. I'm you have no idea. About to sell the car because I don't need a car. So a couple of weeks go by. He's back in town. He says, hey man, I need to talk to you. Can we do dinner? I'm like, this doesn't sound good. He asked me if I could hold off, that there's someone else they needed to put in that job. I didn't understand it. I took it personally. His boss gets involved. And this dude was kind of a sponsor for me. I had to trust him on a big move that didn't sound good at the time, and it worked out. He said, yeah, DJ, we need you to hold off on this. I said, no, I'm not doing that. They said, are you serious? I said, yeah, I couldn't be more serious. At the time, I guess today you would call that standing on business. Little did I know, you familiar with the group War, right? One of my favorite groups growing up.
Indeed, absolutely.
You know that song, you know that song, Stepping in the Darkness?
I do.
Stepping in the dark. Slipping in the darkness, my bad. I was catapulted into darkness after that. Brother, they said, okay, it's all good. Great journey, but it was whatever trajectory I had, that was the last piece of my trajectory.
Really? That's the beginning of the end.
Yeah, but I wouldn't change a thing. Only because I think for the right reasons, I wrote it out. But I think they may have felt threatened. Like, oh, if this doesn't happen for him, we may have a bigger problem. I didn't want them to feel that way.
Sure.
I just wanted them to operate with integrity.
Sure.
So that's one, brother. It all worked out. I'm here today. I love my experience in New York City. Stayed with the company probably 7+ more years. But that was a big one. Very transformational. How about yourself?
I'll tell the other side of that same story. I am fundamentally, the poster child for a cat who has worked 9 different places in my career, right? And so there was never going to be a gold watch for me, and that was okay. I was always looking to build my own toolkit and kind of take my experiences with me as opposed to kind of pour too much in any one place. I was, and you know this, I was in Orlando, Florida, where I landed after my wife died, and I had been unemployed for a year, just kind of taking some time to grieve and get my sons right and kind of organize their lives and make sure the light was staying on in their life still in New York. And I had to get out of New York, and I ended up getting a job with EA Sports down in Orlando, working for a boss at the time. I forget I got hired, and as we were signing the paperwork, he's like, this is either going to go really, really well, or we're going to hate each other at the end, because we were very, very, very different. I think we ended up hating each other at the end. And I'll never forget it. I'm down there. I'm in Orlando. Been down there not quite a year and a half, maybe. And you called me one day, separate from anything professionally, to say, "Hey, man, I'm working on a nonprofit and I'm setting up a website. Can you give me some perspective on, the marketing, the concept? What do you think of this?" And I was like, "Man, when you gonna call me about a job?" And my guess is, now hearing that story, this is about the same time that the napkin was being passed over to you in your life. And I was like, I'm down here in Orlando toiling away. He's like, "Actually, you are about to go to New York, and would you be interested in a Chicago gig at Nike?" Actually, no. Actually, what you said to me was, "I'm about to take this job in New York. There's a senior marketing director job on the New York team. It might not be all that you want. It might be junior to you, but it gets you back to New York, and the money is not bad." And the timing was perfect, because I was really beefing with my boss at EA Sports at the time. And that conversation turned into me throwing my resume in the ring. That turned into me making it through the first filter, getting flown out to headquarters, meeting with a cast of characters in a panel interview, and then a series of one-on-one interviews with the global VP of marketing at that time, Jacques Adaldo. And, Jacques and I's conversation was like, "Yeah, that role is probably not right for you, but, stay tuned. We like what we see, and we'll come back to you." A couple months later, they called me to start interviewing for the job in Chicago that you were leaving after you kind of stood on business for the New York job. And I interviewed through a whole bunch of people and got that job. And it wasn't really about getting that job that was the pivot, the transformational, but it was the move from Orlando to Chicago. It was ultimately the move from Chicago out to Portland. But along that journey, it was the repairing of my broken heart. It was the watching my sons go through their paces growing up. It was the path that led me to falling in love again and meeting my beautiful wife, and beginning to repair and restore some of the structure of my personal life. And I had a great, 7-year run at Nike, and at the end of nearly 30 years in corporate America. But the pivot was at a time in Orlando where I thought Orlando was full of black folks who were a little bit slow and white folks who were very, very racist. It wasn't my cup of tea. And, we got out of there, and around the corner from where we lived, all of the Trayvon Martin stuff goes down. And so for me, it wasn't about what happened professionally, though it was a good run. It was, I had no idea that leaving Orlando in summer of 2008, that 17 years later, now looking back on it, the world would have changed and transpired the way that it has, and that I'd be here 10 years married to, the love of my life, that my sons would be growing into themselves, and that a lot of the scar tissue of our journey has started to heal and repair itself. And so for me, it was about, the courage to jump out of what I was in on a new path. It was recognizing the magic of a good friend calling me at the right time about something else, and that turning into a great opportunity. And so when I look back on my journey in the 7 years I was at Nike, it is never with, "Oh, that was whack. It was crazy. It was full of people that I didn't dig." It was rather, what that 7 years represented for me was personal liberation and continuing to build what I was trying to build while traveling the world, having some really cool gigs. And when I left, 10 years ago almost, it was about corporate America could have it back. I appreciated what the 30 years in corporate America did for me, but it was time to go. And the liberation of feeling that I'd done a good job, that I had had a great run in that space. And I wasn't even calling it retirement at the time, but that single move to Chicago and all that came with it changed my life in every conceivable way. And without question, I think it was divinely ordered as I look at it. I had 3 phenomenal years in Chicago and met a lot of wonderful people. But most importantly, I met a friend, a coworker who years later that neither one of us would have anticipated turned into, just an amazing best friend, life partner, wife, all the things, man. And, God is ever able, and life has been really, really good to me in that regard. And so that for me changed my life, and I am grateful for it.
Let me ask you this, Reg. How much time had you spent in Chicago prior to moving to Chicago?
As a Midwest kid, I had been there a fair amount of time. I
Mm-hmm.
have a great friend, a great frat brother of ours, Ed Hightower, went to grad school together. He's born and raised
Mm-hmm.
Chicago. And I used to tease him all the time, like, yo, I didn't really rock with Chicago. I would come to Chicago in the early days and hang out with you, but you were out in Schaumburg or somewhere out in the suburbs, and he would clown me saying, that's not Chicago. And he and I had a consulting company in the early 2000s, and we did some focus groups in Chicago. And it was the first time I got to really kick it in Chicago. We went to the South Side, hung out at his mom's crib over off of Rhodes and like 80 or somewhere in that area. And he
Mm-hmm.
took me to his elementary school. I forget the name of the school now.
Hmm.
And we went to this elementary school, and he's telling me stories. And I look up, and there's 3 flags there. There's the United States flag. Maybe there's 4 flags. There's the flag of Illinois. There's the flag of Chicago with the 4 stars on it. And then there's the Pan-African Black National flag, red, black, and green,
Wow.
flying high with all the other flags. And I was like, oh, I get Chicago now. And ever since then, I fell in love with it. That was probably 2002 or 3. But before 2008,
Hmm.
that was probably the most important experience. But enough to know that I dug the city, but didn't really know the city till I got there.
That's really cool.
It's a beautiful city, man.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
New
really
York is
cool.
my all-time favorite city, but Chicago
Mm-hmm.
is right there, right behind it.
I'd say the same. I think today, um, Chicago might even be closer to New York in terms of preference, but they both have so much to offer. Chicago was transformational for me. I went to grad school there as well. And then that moved, to your point, from Schaumburg to the city. And we'll talk about kind of metro life in forthcoming episodes. But um, that was life changing as well. Just the level of diversity, engagement with folks who were really on something, as opposed to feeling like the rest of my life will be spent in the burbs. I was in the city a lot, but it's different when you live in the city. Everything you do is in the city. Couldn't agree more, man. Incredible. As I look back, and I'm curious to hear your perspective on this. Is there ever a career decision that you look back on and kind of think, man, what was I thinking? Sort of like I described, what was I thinking telling these folks, I'm not going to be patient. I need to make this happen. Has that ever happened for you?
I don't know if that happened for me. I will say that I remember leaving Nabisco for I was probably 3 years out of college, out of grad school, and at Nabisco doing good work, new product development work, and had gotten a couple of promotions and things were going well. But I was tired of coupon strategy and all the things that come with really classically trained CPG. Though I look back on it and recognize that a lot of great learning was happening there. And I went and I took a job at a company that's still in business now, Profit Brand Strategy in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And it was fundamentally helping to stand up the New York. I'm sorry. I'm our producer just sent us a note. I'll get to that in a second. That's hilarious. Standing up the New York office and being and working in business development. And business development really wasn't my thing. And after a year, I got fired. I got let go because I wasn't,
Mm.
hunting and bringing in new business. And I remember that experience being sobering, like at the cafeteria restaurant in New York. And it was a great experience for the year, but I wasn't bringing any new clients in. So I don't regret that decision, but that move from Nabisco to Profit, from Profit ultimately to some consulting that ultimately led to the Nike gig. In my mind, no mistakes, right? No regrets. It all laddered up to where I am now. And so no regrets, but I definitely got, let go once in a way that I did not see coming, and that shit got my attention. I'll say that. I learned that I went like business development in that way. It wasn't really my thing. We got a question from our producer. I just got to say this out loud because this is hilarious. Why do we care? Why did you want to evolve in the first place? What in the world now signals it's time to pivot? Why do we care? That's a great question. You want to take a shot at that? I got some thoughts on it.
Yeah, I will. I think what was important and why we should care about my particular move was I made it very personal, Reg, and I'm not sure that was the right thing to do. There was a broader enterprise beyond me and a corporate machine that was moving and had plans for people. I took it very personally. And it's one of the things that I, retrospectively have thought about my journey. And some things are to be taken personally, some aren't. So I oftentimes wonder if my filter around taking things personally was a function of intrinsic issues I had or intrinsic concerns and dynamics, or was it also in combination with the external world at Nike that, at times left us wondering about ourselves potentially. So I think what's important about it and where I've evolved is I don't have those concerns anymore. And when I make a decision, I'm ultra confident around it for all the right reasons. I think then I probably would have made the right decision, Reg, but I think I was also a bit more junior potentially in my thinking and took it personally. So the standing on business was a lot of the reason I said, yeah, no, we're going to make this move because you promised it to me. Not sure that's the right tactic. So how about you? You said you had some thoughts.
I agree with what you just said. I think my thoughts are, if I were to say to people who are grinding in the game now, whatever that is, it ain't always going to be sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Jobs, it's a cold game right now. Finding a job, finding a good career path isn't the easiest thing in the world, right? Hiring ain't what it used to be. The process of go to school, get a good job, find someone you love, get a house, like that. That model of chasing the American dream just doesn't work the way it used to, or if it ever did for a lot of folk. And so I think it is about owning your own path to the extent that you can build a development plan for yourself and learn in space. That's important. I think you're right about the patience that, in a lot of these jobs, you're an apprentice, right? You're a grunt. You're learning to do the thing, and that may come with a good manager or a not so good manager. That may come with good colleagues and not so good colleagues. And, ripping and running can be a solution to get out of bad situations, but fighting through it can also be a solution. And so for me, there were times when I could have stuck it out and fought through it, and I chose not to. I don't regret, when I bounced. There were times when I did not put my shoulder to the wheel, and there were consequences to that. And so I'm mindful of that. I would simply say that it matters, and why do you care around how do you think about your personal and professional development? How do you deal with the world where you can't see around the corners and know what's coming next? I had no idea what was coming next for the move to Chicago. I just knew I needed to get out. And some of this is about making moves on faith that is going to work out, not knowing what your next move looks like. Like I'm always, I would tell people don't quit a job unless you have a job lined up. That's never been my way. I've always leaped, then looked, or leapt, then looked, and it's worked out for me. That may not be for everybody, but it is important, I think, mostly to own your own path, right? To be really focused on how does it feel where I am? How's the work that I'm doing allowing me to develop and grow? What am I putting in my own individual toolbox that I can take with me? And constantly making the evaluation of, it's a cold game. And when you jump, just know it may not be sexier on the other side, and be willing to take a calculated risk, but also know when to stand pat.
Yeah, and I think just in closing too, I love that, Reg. And for me, most of my career, I wasn't married, didn't have children, got married after I quote unquote retired. But I was able to make decisions like you're talking about strictly through a lens that impacted DJ. And I think, for other folks, it might not be that simple. If you have a family, you have kids and other considerations. But for me, I had a little bit of that as well, Reg, where I could just make a move or stand on business. I think, again, man, for me, it's doing that. But I think as I look back and what matters and why this is important is a heavy consideration for what's your North Star. And I think then I thought my North Star was one thing. And I didn't have that really, really long-term perspective on my career. So that's not all bad because I ended up retiring early. But I think having that North Star helps you make decisions like that also.
Well, let me follow up on that. Having that North Star is important. We talk a lot about wanting to help people get free and the notion of liberation, ideologically and in other ways. How does your journey feed into your sense of your own personal freedom at this stage? Like you've got that wisdom now to look back on it. Like, do you feel freer, and do you think some of those decisions relate to your sense of liberation now?
Undoubtedly, Reg. I think then, rightfully so, at the center for me was financial liberation. In New York was a quicker route to that. The compensation was significantly different. I was also to kind of parlay my existing spot in Chicago into a rental spot. So there were some things that financially I'd worked that out too. And at the center of my journey was really financial liberation, not becoming an executive vice president. So now that is shifted. I'd say what's at the center is quality of life now that other things have been solved for. So it was actually really pivotal and critical to my ultimate journey. I don't think I knew all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But it ended up being that now quality of life for me, man, being able to spend time with people I could love and care about. And manage my money. But that's much more important to me now. How about you?
Same. I think, and we should probably, come around the corner to wrapping pretty soon.
Yeah.
I would say that the move to Chicago, as much as any single thing, was community. Like, getting there and reconnecting or connecting with some folks that I hadn't either seen in a while or had not met changed my life. Where I was going to church, where I was living, who I was running with, the spaces that I was flowing in, cats from Chicago who opened the doors for me in a lot of ways and showed me tremendous love. It became home, man. And this notion of home as opposed to a house, have always known it. We all know that, kind of cliche became really real in Cleveland and Chicago. And so for me, the liberation of being in community and being connected in a way that was soulful, that was real, and that people took you in was reignited in Chicago. And I carried it with me out here to the Pacific Northwest. And, it is so freeing to be surrounded by people that love you, that you love, and that are moving forward in the best ways that they can. Sometimes it's struggle, but always together. And that sense of togetherness was, necessary for me as I was coming out of a really, really dark time in my life. And so I'm grateful, man, for the friends I had in Chicago and cats who looked out for me, and I appreciated it. And part of the pivot is figuring it out as you go, man. We don't have the answers, but it continues to be believing in the journey and trying to, take one step after the other and see how it goes, and come what may, keep your head to the sky. So that's my pivot.
Love that concept.
Mama, we made it. We're going to keep on making it one step at a time, together in collective. I'm Reg. That's DJ. Have a great day.
See you soon.
Mama,